Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're taking a deep dive into excerpts you chose from John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. And we're going to try to uncover
Yes.
not just the story itself, but the layers of meaning that make this book kind of a timeless exploration of human nature and social change.
Yeah. It's really fascinating how Steinbeck goes beyond just depicting the Dust Bowl.
Right.
He uses this historical event to explore deeper questions about resilience, justice, and what happens when the world that you know is ripped away.
Yeah, right from the start, you highlighted that description of the wind and how it was working at the rain crest. Almost like the land itself is becoming this character, this hostile character. What does that tell us about the challenges ahead for these people?
Well, that visceral imagery that he uses really sets the stage for the Jode's displacement.
Yeah.
The land, their source of life, is literally turning against them, and it foreshadows the hardships they'll face,
Right.
and sets a tone of almost a biblical struggle.
And then we meet Tom Joad. He's hitchhiking home after prison. You pointed out his encounter with the truck driver.
Yeah.
And to me, it feels like more than just a casual conversation. It's like the driver speaks in this clipped, almost coded way.
Exactly. That clipped language, it reflects a society under pressure
Yeah.
where people are adapting to survive.
Right.
And it suggests that even outside of prison walls, Tom is entering a world with its own, set of constrictions and rules and ways to be.
It's almost like he's still in prison in a way.
Exactly.
And then Tom's own reflection about missing the prison routine. It's sad, but it's revealing.
Yeah, it really reveals the psychological impact of displacement. Tom craves structure in a world that feels increasingly chaotic.
Yeah.
And this sense of disorientation, it really sets the stage for the Jode's journey, where they'll constantly be searching for that stability.
For sure. Speaking of displacement, we then see the Joad family farm. It's abandoned and dilapidated. And you highlighted specific details like the broken windows and the open gate. Why focus on those?
Well, those details aren't just descriptive, they're symbolic.
Right.
We know Ma Jode is meticulous,
Yes.
so that open gate is a visual representation of their world being completely upended. Their sense of order, of control, it's gone.
Right.
It's just gone.
And such a stark contrast to the image of Ma we'll encounter later, who really holds the family together.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned Ma, because even though she's not physically present in these early scenes, her absence is palpable.
Yes.
That broken down farm is a foreshadowing of the challenges that she'll face trying to keep her family intact.
Yeah. We also briefly meet Muley Graves clinging to that deserted land. He's almost like a ghost haunting the ruins. What is Steinbeck's purpose in introducing him so early?
Well, Muley embodies the psychological toll of this displacement.
Oh, okay.
He's lost his land, his purpose. He's tethered to the past. His story foreshadows the internal conflicts that a lot of the characters will face as they're forced to migrate.
You highlighted that scene where Muley, Tom, and Casey share that meager meal of roasted rabbit. It's a small act, but it feels significant.
Yeah, that shared meal speaks volumes about human connection in the face of hardship. Even in this desolate landscape, they find solace in, simple acts of sharing, of camaraderie.
Yeah.
It hints at the importance of community as a source of strength during these times.
Makes me think about those other families that the Jodes will encounter on the road, those who share their struggles and offer a sense of shared purpose.
Yeah, precisely. Steinbeck is setting up this contrast between the individualistic mindset represented by characters like the truck driver, and then this growing need for collective action that will happen as the Joes encounter others facing, similar hardships.
Yeah. And speaking of challenging mindsets, we have Casey, the former preacher. He's questioning his faith. He's searching for a new purpose.
Yeah.
What struck you about his observation that banks are monsters men created but can't control?
I mean, Casey's crisis of faith goes beyond religion at this point,
Yeah.
He's grappling with the ethical implications of economic systems. That statement about the banks connects the Jode's personal tragedy to a larger social and economic crisis. It's not just about their individual misfortune. It's about systemic forces that are reshaping the world around them.
Yeah. It's interesting how Casey's wrestling with those big questions about faith and justice, while Tom at this point is mostly concerned with getting home.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It highlights the different stages of awareness that the characters are in.
Right.
Tom is focused on individual survival, while Casey is already starting to think about collective action and social change.
Yeah. Then, of course, there's the wrenching scene of the Joad family packing their meager belongings. You pointed out the conflict between Grandpa, who wants to stay on his land, and Ma, who is focused on keeping the family together. What's at the heart of that clash?
That conflict encapsulates the emotional toll of forced migration. Your grandpa represents a deep connection to place, to roots. Ma, on the other hand, embodies the pragmatic need for survival.
Right.
For keeping the family unit intact, even if it means leaving everything behind.
And leaving Grandpa behind is a powerful statement in itself.
It is. It foreshadows the sacrifices and losses that they'll face.
Yeah.
The family unit, while resilient, will be tested and strained by the forces that they encounter.
For sure.
That raises the question, what will they have to give up to survive, and will it be worth it in the end?
Right. And just as they're about to embark on this uncertain journey, Steinbeck introduces that chilling chapter about the monster of industry. It's almost like a shift in perspective, zooming out to this larger, more impersonal force.
That chapter is crucial because it connects the Joad's personal struggles to the broader socioeconomic context. Steinbeck is personifying industrialization as this destructive force, one that's devouring farms and spitting out, these desperate migrants.
Yeah.
He's exposing the anxieties of an era where technology is both a promise and a threat.
You specifically highlighted the descriptions of tractors replacing human labor. It feels like Steinbeck is mourning the loss of something essential.
Yeah, he's lamenting the severing of the connection between humans and the land. Those tractors, described as monsters, represent the dehumanizing aspects of progress, where efficiency and profit are prioritized over human well-being.
And that really sets the stage for the harsh realities of the Joad's journey west, which we'll delve into in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
They're entering a world where their labor is commodified, their dignity challenged, and their very humanity put to the test.
For sure.
We left off with the Joads heading west, thrust into a world where their labor is commodified and their dignity is constantly challenged.
Yeah, it's interesting how Steinbeck portrays the migrants' evolving sense of community alongside their growing awareness of the systems that are working against them.
Right.
At first, their focus is on individual survival. But as they encounter other families on the road, something shifts.
You highlighted that scene where the Joads meet the Wilsons and they share what little food they have. It's a small gesture,
right,
but it feels significant.
Absolutely. That act of sharing foreshadows the kind of collective spirit that will become essential for their survival.
Right.
It's a subtle but powerful moment where individual needs start to give way to a sense of shared purpose.
Yeah, and it contrasts sharply with the attitudes of those who benefit from the migrants' desperation. You pointed out that gas station scene where the waitress but clearly sees the Joads as just another transaction.
Right. That scene perfectly encapsulates the dehumanizing aspect of economic exploitation.
Yeah.
The waitress isn't inherently cruel, but she's caught in a system that values profit over compassion. And it highlights the subtle ways in which the migrants are constantly being reminded of their place, in this new social order.
And that sense of being othered is amplified when they reach the Hoovervilles. You describe them as a breeding ground for desperation, but also as a catalyst for a shift in consciousness.
Yeah.
How so?
The Hoovervilles are where the Joads experience the true extent of the migrant crisis.
Yeah.
They're surrounded by poverty, disease, and a constant sense of fear. But it's also where they encounter people like the Ragged Man, who warns Tom about accepting low wages.
Yeah, that Ragged Man seems to understand the forces at play better than most.
He does. He's a symbol of those who've been chewed up and spit out by the system.
Right.
His warning to Tom highlights the need for collective bargaining.
Right.
The idea that the migrants have more power if they stand together.
Which brings us to the question of morality and how it shifts in desperate times. You highlighted Tom's confrontation with the deputy, where he justifies violence as a response to injustice.
Yeah.
It's a complex moment.
It is. It forces us to consider what happens when traditional notions of right and wrong collide with the need to survive. Tom's actions are morally ambiguous, but they're a direct result of the pressure cooker that he's in.
Right.
Steinbeck doesn't condone the violence, but he's asking us to understand the context in which it occurs.
It's a theme that resonates throughout the book.
Yeah.
Characters are constantly forced to make choices they wouldn't normally consider.
And that's where Casey's influence becomes crucial.
Right.
He challenges traditional morality. He argues that true goodness lies in recognizing the shared humanity of all people.
Mm-hmm.
He advocates for collective action not just as a means of survival, but as a moral imperative.
It's interesting how Casey's journey mirrors the evolution of the migrants' consciousness as a whole.
Exactly. As the Joads and other families face increasing hardship, they begin to understand the systemic nature of their plight.
Okay.
They realize that individual action is not enough. They need to come together to fight for their rights.
And that's where the government camp comes in.
Mm-hmm.
You described it as a stark contrast to the Hoovervilles.
Yeah.
What makes it so different?
The government camp, while not perfect, represents a more humane approach to the migrant crisis.
Okay.
It provides basic necessities, a sense of order, and most importantly, a sense of dignity.
Right.
The residents have a voice in how the camp is run, which fosters a sense of community and self-reliance.
You pointed out the detail about the camp having the best dances in the county.
Right.
It seems trivial,
Yeah.
but it feels symbolic.
It speaks to the restorative power of community and shared joy.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the midst of hardship, they find ways to celebrate life and connect with one another. It's a powerful reminder that hope and resilience can exist even in the darkest of times.
But as you pointed out, even the small haven is threatened by those who see the migrants' self-sufficiency as a threat.
Right. The authorities view the camp with suspicion, fearing its potential to disrupt the existing power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
They try to undermine its success, which highlights the ongoing tension between those who seek to control and exploit the migrants and those who advocate for their rights and dignity.
This tension culminates in the tragic events at the dance leading to Casey's sacrifice and Tom's transformation.
Mm-hmm.
What's significant about this turning point?
Casey's death is a catalyst for Tom's radicalization.
Okay.
He witnesses firsthand the brutality of the system and realizes that passive resistance is no longer an option.
Right.
He embraces Casey's message of collective action and decides to continue the fight for social justice.
It's a heartbreaking loss, but also a powerful moment of growth for Tom.
It is. It signifies a shift from individual survival to a commitment to a larger cause.
Mm-hmm.
Tom realizes that the fight for justice requires sacrifice, and that sometimes personal happiness must be put aside for the greater good.
And Ma, despite her grief, seems to understand and accept Tom's decision.
Ma, throughout the book, embodies a profound resilience.
Yeah.
She recognizes that the world is changing, and that her children must find their own ways to navigate it. Her acceptance of Tom's choice speaks to the depth of her love and her understanding of the changing times.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes love means letting go. Mm-hmm.
Even when it hurts.
It underscores the idea that the fight for social justice often requires individuals to make difficult choices, to step outside of their comfort zones and to challenge the status quo.
Speaking of challenging the status quo, we can't ignore the deliberate efforts to exploit the migrants' labor.
Right.
You mentioned the oversupply of workers, the canneries squeezing out small farmers.
Right.
It's a cycle designed to keep them powerless.
Steinbeck is very deliberate in his portrayal of the economic forces at play.
Yeah.
He shows how the system is rigged against the migrants, trapping them in a cycle of poverty and desperation.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just telling a story, he's exposing the mechanisms of oppression.
It's a cycle that fuels resentment and ultimately leads to further conflict.
Right.
We see hints of this in the growing unrest among the migrants, the whispers of rebellion.
Exactly. The seeds of resistance are being sown, and it's only a matter of time before they sprout.
Right.
The question is, how will that resistance manifest, and what will be the consequences? And just as this tension is building, nature delivers another blow in the form of devastating floods.
Right.
It feels like a cruel twist of fate, a reminder of the forces beyond human control.
The floods are a powerful symbol of the overwhelming challenges that the migrants face.
Mm-hmm.
They represent the precariousness of their existence and the indifference of nature to their plight. They've escaped the Dust Bowl only to face a new kind of disaster.
And yet, amidst this devastation, we see the birth scene in the flooded boxcar culminating in the stillborn baby. You described it as hope extinguished. It's such a powerful image.
It's a gut-wrenching moment that encapsulates the immense toll of poverty and hardship. The stillborn baby symbolizes the loss of innocence, the crushing weight of circumstance, and the fragility of life, especially for those on the margins of society.
It's a scene that could easily lead to despair.
Yeah.
But then we have Ma in her quiet strength tending to Rose of Sharon. She focuses on the practicalities of survival, on finding nourishment for her daughter.
Even in the face of profound loss, Ma embodies resilience.
Yeah.
Her actions speak louder than words. She doesn't have time for despair. She's focused on caring for her family, on finding a way forward.
It's a reminder that hope isn't about denying a reality of suffering, but about finding the strength to keep going, to keep believing in the possibility of a better future.
And that's where the book's final chapters become so significant.
Right.
We'll explore those next and see how Steinbeck uses this powerful imagery to offer a message of resilience, compassion, and the enduring power of the human spirit.
We ended on a pretty bleak note, with those devastating floods and the loss of Rose of Sharon's baby. It'd be easy to just succumb to despair at that point in the book.
Yeah, it's true. The final chapter could have been overwhelmingly bleak. But instead, Steinbeck uses those tragic events to, further highlight the themes of resilience and the enduring power of the human spirit. It's like he's asking, what do we do when faced with the unimaginable? How do we find the strength to go on?
You mentioned how the stillborn baby, while tragic, is also this really powerful symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expand on that a little?
Well, the baby represents, the extinguished hopes and dreams of all these migrants. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of life, especially for those living in poverty and facing constant hardship. But it's not just about individual loss. It speaks to a collective sense of despair,
Yeah.
like a feeling that the future itself is in peril.
Right. And yet, in the midst of this despair, we have Ma's incredible strength. Even as she mourns the loss of her grandchild, she's focused on taking care of Rose of Sharon, on making sure she has nourishment. It's a very primal, almost animalistic kind of strength.
Exactly. Ma's actions in this final chapter transcend language and social constructs.
Right.
She embodies that raw, instinctual drive to protect and nurture, even when all hope seems lost. It's a testament to the power of the human spirit to persevere, even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
And then, of course, there's that final, unforgettable image of Rose of Sharon offering her breast milk to that starving man. It's a moment that's both shocking and profoundly moving.
Yeah, that act is so much more than just a gesture of charity.
Right.
It's a radical act of compassion, a defiance of the despair that threatens to consume them. Rose of Sharon, having just lost her own child, chooses to nourish a stranger. It's an act that speaks to the interconnectedness of all humanity, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are not alone.
You pointed out that Steinbeck could have ended the book on that note of despair.
Yeah.
But instead, he chooses to leave us with this image of hope and transcendence.
Right. It would have been easy to focus solely on the tragedy to leave readers with a sense of hopelessness. But instead, Steinbeck offers a glimpse of something else, something that suggests that even amidst suffering, there's the potential for redemption, for connection, for a kind of spiritual transcendence.
It's a challenging ending, but ultimately, I think it's a hopeful one.
I agree. It's a call to action, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, we have a choice. We can choose despair, or we can choose compassion. We can choose to perpetuate the cycle of suffering, or we can choose to break it.
And that choice, it seems, is at the heart of The Grapes of Wrath. Steinbeck doesn't offer any easy answers, but he forces us to confront these really difficult questions and to consider our own role in creating a more just and compassionate world.
Absolutely. The book is a challenge, a provocation, and ultimately a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It reminds us that even when we feel lost and broken, there's a strength within us that can help us, find our way back to the light, to connection, to hope.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. We hope this has sparked some new insights and inspired you to revisit this timeless classic or to experience it for the first time. And as always, thanks for listening.